Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, I had a voice radio. So today, I am showing you a new Celebi card, or for the pedants out there, and I pride myself on my pedantry, Shining Celebi. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, this ain't no ordinary Celebi, although it does look a lot like an old Celebi. We'll see why in a moment. Now 70 HP is low, but of course, level ball is a huge advantage to getting him going. The fact that he's a grass Pokemon means weakness against things like Lapras, for instance, and Lycanroc and Zygarde. But let's face it, you're not going to be attacking with Celebi anyway. We don't know the weakness here. There's an outside chance it's Psychic. It's probably Fire. And that's actually quite bad, because Baby Volcanion, Haynick, can do 20 for 1 energy. Which means if you had a Professor Kukui or a Steam Up from Big Volcanion EX, it is a very easy one-hit KO. It's about the only time where weakness on such a low HP Pokemon is actually going to be relevant. And now I'm told the retreat cost is 1, I have no proof of that. Assuming the retreat cost is 1, which it should be, that is a good thing, because this is a bench-sitting Celebi, not an attacking Celebi, so we want the lowest retreat cost possible. Now, speaking of the attack, we don't need to spend very long on this at all. 30 damage for 2 energy is just plain bad. Yes, it can go to 60 with a Choice Band, 80 with a Professor Kukui, and then you can bring in the Promo Lurantis to bump it up even more. I mean, I suppose you could put it up to 160 if you've got a Choice Band and a Professor Kukui and 4 Promo Lurantis, but when you're playing grass decks nowadays, you've got attackers like Tapu Bulu, who does 30 for 1 energy, and then of course you've got Lurantis, who, although is a stage 1, you know, you're doing 40 damage for 1 energy, and you get to attach 2 energy from your discard. Bad attack, ladies and gentlemen, let's go away. But the reason that Shining Celebi gets his or her own video is the ability Time Recall. If this Pokemon is in play, each of your evolved Pokemon can use any attack from its previous evolutions. Although do make sure that you've got the correct amount of energy. Now this might remind you of the Stadium Shrine of Memories, and it should, because it does the same thing. It might remind you of the Pokemon Tool card Memory Berry, and it should, because it does the same thing. But mostly it will probably remind you of the Celebi EX from Boundaries Crossed that has the same ability. But we see this quite a lot with Pokemon. They like repeating themselves when it comes to the same Pokemon here. Now, sometimes this is going to be completely irrelevant. So if we take Vespiquen, evolves from Combee that does 10 for 1 energy, well, Vespiquen's got a better 10 for 1 energy attack. And if you look at something like Gyarados, that evolves from Magikarp, but then again, Magikarp only attacks for a water energy, and in Gyarados you only play double colourless energy. And then you've got some Pokemon where you're very, very rarely going to be using the attacks of the pre-evolutions, but you could under weird circumstances. So take Metagross GX. Well, Beldum for 1 metal energy can do 20 damage and discard it, and Metang for 1 colourless energy can do 20 damage. Well, sometimes you might not have free energy on a Metagross, and you might only want to do 20 damage, and in those situations, being able to copy an attack of a pre-evolution is pretty tasty. Although, would you really want to play Celebi in your deck just for the off chance of that happening once every 20 or 30 games? Not 100% sure that you do, but it's an option nonetheless. But of course, there are some options here where it is really, really useful to have the attacks of the pre-evolutions. Now, one of the ones you might remember from Shrine of Memories was Groudon. Groudon, or Primal Groudon I should say, saw an awful lot of play with Shrine of Memories. It saw play, I mean, it was basically a staple in these Primal Groudon decks. Because Primal Groudon had Gaia Volcano for 4 energy, and that was the lowest energy attack it had. Not terribly convenient. Whereas Groudon EX's Ripclaw, 30 damage for 2 energy, flip a coin if heads, discard an energy attached to the defending Pokemon, is not a great attack, but it doesn't cost 4 energy. More recently, we've been seeing Mega Mewtwo use Shrine of Memories to copy Mewtwo EX's damage change. And that really did make it a much, much better deck, because now you're not just smashing with Psychic Infinity, you're also able to swap damage counters using damage change, so if your opponent doesn't get a one-hit KO, they're in trouble. This, ladies and gentlemen, is exceptionally useful. Now, these are old examples, though, and don't get me wrong, Mewtwo is seeing almost no play at the moment because of Garbodor. But if Mewtwo ever does see play again, Celebi is going to be used, because one of the things that really stopped these Mewtwo decks being good was not, or at least on the turns they weren't good, was being unable to find Shrine of Memories. Well, that's not an issue anymore with Celebi. So let's look at some more recent examples then. Some upcoming examples where this particular Shining Celebi might see quite a bit of play. Well, one that comes to mind is Golisopod GX. Now, we do actually have an English scan of Golisopod now, which is fantastic. This is one of the cards from Burning Shadows about which I am most excited. I think this is going to be really good. And if I were playing at Worlds, this would be one of my top choices. The attack first impression is brilliant. 30 damage, but 120 if you became active that turn. And of course, with things like Choice Band and Promolorantis, this could get very silly very quickly. Not to mention using Forest of Giant Plants and Wally to evolve up straight away. But if you want to know more about Golisopod GX, check out my video. I'll pop a link in the description. What I'm interested in for the moment, as weird as this might sound, is Wimpod. Because there is a Wimpod from Guardians Rising that has a really good attack for a single colourless energy. Shuffle this Pokemon and all cards attached to it into your deck. Now again, this isn't an attack you're going to be using every single turn, but Golisopod GX has a very high HP. And sometimes your opponent might be on the verge of getting a KO. So you here can use Celebi to copy Wimpod Scamper Away, and then you can pop Golisopod GX back into your deck, deny your opponent a couple of prizes. Hit with first impression, hit with first impression, hit with first impression, Scamper Away. This could be a fun little use for it. You want a better example? How about using Alolan Ninetales? Now this is a very good deck. Alolan Ninetales is seeing an awful lot of play and an awful lot of success. But what is seeing even more play at the moment is Alolan Vulpix for the Beacon attack. 0 energy, search your deck for any 2 Pokemon and put them into your hand. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a spectacular setup attack. And what you can do here is be using Alolan Vulpix without resigning yourself to have to be giving up a prize. Nowadays, when we use Alolan Vulpix, we know he's only got 60 HP. We know he's going to be KO'd, but it's worth it to get our Pokemon out. Well, now you can have a 210 HP Alolan Ninetales rather than a 60 HP Alolan Vulpix. And I think that's going to survive just a little bit longer. I'll give you one more example. Zoroark. Now, Zoroark Break already benefits massively from being a Break Evolved Pokemon that can use both the attack and the ability of Zoroark. But how about Zoroark's Moonless Madness? Not Moonlight Madness, Moonless Madness. One of the most confusing attack names we've got at the moment, one that I get wrong most often. But here's the thing. You just get automatic confusion. And it's for 1 energy. And Zoroark does not have a 1 energy attack. Zorua does. And confusion, if your opponent flips a tails when they try and attack, well, that's 30 damage, and that means the attack fails. I'm not saying this is going to be the thing that you use, but let's say you're playing Vespiquen Zoroark. Well, you need to play a whole bunch of Pokemon to fuel Vespiquen anyway, so why not just play 1 Celebi here? Seems like it might be worth a go. And now you've got a single energy attack on Zoroark that you didn't have before. And this really will go for a whole bunch of evolved Pokemon. Often the pre-evolutions, although the attacks aren't amazing, you can do them in situations where you couldn't attack. Just like we talked about before with Primal Groudon using Shrine of Memories to copy regular Groudon. Now, bad news, Celebi gives up a prize. Good news, Field Blower cannot be used to discard Celebi like it could be used to get rid of Shining Memories. Bad news, it's an ability on a basic, which means Garbodor and Hexmaniac, but it also means Alolan Muck and Silent Lab. And I think after the rotation, Alolan Muck is going to see an awful lot more play, and Shining Celebi, shall we say, little bit vulnerable. Now, if at any point I've called Celebi Jirachi by mistake, I apologise. I keep doing that in this video. I think I've edited them out, but if I have left any in there, please don't be too harsh. As for being harsh, I actually quite like Shining Celebi. I'm going to give Shining Celebi between 3 and 4 Wassies, because here's the deal. Just like in Shrine of Memories, there's going to be deck after deck after deck after deck after deck that could not care less about Shining Celebi. But then you're going to get things like Primal Groudon and Mega Mewtwo, 2 top decks that really rely on the card. And that is why I think Shining Celebi is destined to see quite a lot of play. But if you disagree with me, that's what the comment section is there for. Go nuts, be nice. Make sure that you'll follow me on Twitter at TheWassie. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, and follow me on Twitch, twitch.tv/PTCGRadio, for some live PTCG Radio action. And the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.